brought to you by Restoration Counseling. Today, we're thrilled to have an enlightening conversation with Dr. Lee Long, visionary author and founder of Restoration Counseling, alongside Lila Pond, a distinguished licensed professional counselor and supervisor at Restoration. Together, they will explore the groundbreaking cognitive behavioral analysis system of psychotherapy meticulously designed to address chronic depression. Join us as we uncover its origins, methodology, and the profound impact it has on those battling persistent depressive disorders. Dive deep into the conversation on mental wellness with us. Your path to mental wellness starts here.
Well, Lee, it is so great to be here today to talk about a theory and a method that is so impactful for folks who have been living with depression for a very long time. And it's an unusual name, CBASP. So this segment of our podcast is going to be explaining what CBASP is, and it's definitely not a form of fish, right? With a little miso sauce on it.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to explain in very simple terms, what in the world is CBASP and how is it different from other traditional cognitive behavioral therapy methods?
Yeah. So thanks for hanging, Lila. This is a lot of fun, and I'm super glad to be with you today. CBASP stands for Cognitive Behavioral Analysis System of Psychotherapy. So it's definitely a mouthful, and it differs from traditional cognitive behavior therapy in a lot of different ways. CBASP is a learning acquisition model. And so what does that mean? Well, it means that as therapists, we're going to work for our clients to experience learning. They're going to learn skills. There's two real goals of CBASP. One is felt safety. And so what does felt safety mean? Well, a lot of folks who grow up in tense or harsh environments as children don't learn to attach in a safe way. So the theory is that you have what we call a transference hypothesis, or a belief that the world is going to treat you in a very familiar way. And when someone comes in with stress or trauma from their past, they believe that they lump the therapist into that same bucket, if you will, of people that we're going to be treated the same way by this therapist that we've been treated elsewhere in the rest of our life. But the goal is felt safety, is that the therapist works to help the patient or the client understand that the therapist is different than the significant other, the family member, or whoever it was that they experienced this pain from.
Okay.
So that's the first goal. The second is a perceptual connection. And what is the perceptual connection mean? Well, it means that a lot of people who struggle with real deep and chronic unretracting depression that
Are unrelenting?
Yeah, unrelenting. They look at life as it's Groundhog's Day, because what are the monikers of chronic depression? Or depression is a helplessness and a hopelessness.
Oh.
And so in that helplessness and hopelessness, it's like, well, I cannot be helped, therefore life is hopeless. And there is this constant theme of nothing will change. Well, in CBASP, one of the things that we work towards is helping that patient or client learn a problem-solving method that helps them see their own personal efficacy, their ability to make changes in their lives, their ability to set goals for themselves and achieve them. And one thing you'll hear in CBASP is, what was your desired outcome?
I would imagine most people would say for her or him to stop doing XYZ, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And we walk through with people that we treat that the idea that this isn't about changing your environment. This is about changing
Ah,
your actions in the environment.
there you go.
And so that's kind of the nutshell of how of what CBASP is, and how it's different from, different cognitive behavioral therapies, is that it's really taking an attachment theory and a behavioral theory, and really pulling those two theories together, that you learn how to attach in a very disciplined manner, in a very professional and appropriate manner, to the therapist, so that you learn what a secure attachment, a healthy secure attachment, looks like. And the behavioral piece is the understanding that I'm going to behave differently. And what does that mean? What are my outcomes? What do I want for me? And so I would say that that's how it differs.
Okay, and that makes a lot of sense. I know that there probably got to be some pretty key components or techniques that help a person get to that place, or even the ability, the awareness that they could do that. They
Yeah.
could get to that place where they could make those decisions.
Yeah, that's a you're spot on. The goals of CBASP are matched. The whole felt safety and the perceptual connection. Those two goals are matched with the techniques.
Ah,
And the technique for, or the goal of felt safety, is matched with the technique of interpersonal discrimination exercise. And that tool, again, is the idea that I, as the patient or the client, may have this sense that you, as my therapist, are going to treat me like my mother did, or like my cousin did, or whomever I've experienced a pivotal attachment to. I have this belief that you're going to be just like that. And the interpersonal discrimination exercise, it's really sweet, and it's a really beautiful technique that people experience this. Wait a minute, you're different. And that
ah,
epiphany for them is the possibility that others may be different too.
that is a huge epiphany. So, can you just walk through a quick example of that? Or,
So if if we if your patient has the idea that if they make a mistake,
Mhm.
that what their attachment, there are their the significant people that they were attached to in their childhood would have given them, as I like to say, up the river for it, making that mistake.
Mhm.
If they come to you having made a mistake, they're expecting that you're going to treat them poorly.
Like they forgot a session, they didn't show up for a session, and the next time they show up, they're ready for an up the river.
Yes. They're
Okay.
ready for you to give them up the river. Well, what does
Okay.
up the river mean? It means you're going to tell them, well, I can't believe you. You showed up, but you didn't show up. You missed it. What's wrong with you? They're ex-
Wasting my time.
that's right. That's right. Don't be wasting my time. They're expecting that onslaught of anger.
Yes, yes.
What they don't, what's so fascinating in all of this is that I've found is that they don't see that when I greet them, in this example, if I were to go out and greet them, they'd be like, I know you're so angry. I'm like, well, actually, I'm not. Well, yeah. You, in fact, are. And when you sit down with them and walk them through an interpersonal discrimination exercise, what they begin to see is, well, what was your mom's behavior? Oh, she'd have yelled at me. She would have told me how stupid I am. She would have, and they describe what I call up the river, getting up the river. And what did I do? And the first few times we walk through this with folks, they don't know. They don't have a category or a concept for me, what I did or what I didn't do.
Yes.
And they're dumbfounded by that. Again, because our brain goes to that place of expectancy, and so we fill in the blanks. But when you're asked to wait, look, what is the blank saying? What's filled in actuality?
Hey, there you go. Actuality. Okay.
They don't, they, when they see it, they're like, oh my gosh, so you're different than my parent? You're different than that significant attachment from my past? Yes. Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's a very, very beautiful experience.
Yeah. So it's one thing to hear that that's a technique, but then to hear it played out in real time of, or a real example, so to speak, makes such a difference.
Yeah.
It makes it more applicable.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good.
Yeah.
The other goal of the perceptual connection is paired with what's called situation analysis. And
Okay.
that's where you take there's 5 steps that you go through, and you talk through for instance, an instance that occurred, and you help them learn to not see it globally, but just to see a beginning and an end of a situation. How did they interpret that? What was their behavior in that instance? They look at the actual outcome or the consequence of that situation, the ending spot, and then we look at what had we hoped would happen.
Okay.
Walk them through those types of situations, and I always to teach people how to do situation analysis, or as we call it, essay. But it's so funny when I say essay, people think, oh yeah, I'm writing an essay, like an essay. What? No, it's S.
No thanks.
Right. I always walk them through, and I say, I always use a silly situation that is a joke that I don't know the ending to. It's to a bar. The bartender was a frog. I asked the frog for a drink. He said, "We don't serve your kind." So I turn around and I leave. And we walk through that type of a situation where what happened? What did I think? Well, everybody hates me. Nobody loves me. I should go eat worms, right? Sometimes we see that as our interpretations. Well, what did I do? I walked into the bar, I asked for a drink, and then I turned around and left. What was the actual outcome? He said, we don't serve your kind, and I left. What did you want to do? Well, I wanted to tell him that was rude. Great.
Oh, yes.
So then we walk through a remediation is walking. That's the elicitation. And then the remediation is what would we need to do to get to that desired outcome? And I won't bore you with all those details. But what's really sweet is when people start seeing that they can get what they want out of a situation out of them. I got what I wanted out of me in this situation.
Well, and I would imagine that nobody loves me. Everybody hates me.
Right.
Well, instead of telling the bartender that was rude, please serve me a drink, I'm going to go eat worms. I could see where those 3 in thoughts or interpretations of the situation could lead me to a very depressive state.
Right.
Right. So it sounds to me like that part of the essay is extremely key to understanding where I go not every time. That's not a good word to use maybe, but quite often that's where I go when I'm in a situation where I'm not standing up for what I'd like to say or do. I'm not being assertive or
yes, and it illuminates for us and for the person that is being treated. It illuminates, where is my mind going, and what are my beliefs here? And
okay.
there can be, it's everybody hates me. Well, is that grounded in this situation at the bar? Is everybody at the bar? No, no, that is That is an overgeneral, that's a globalization or an
There you
overgeneralization. And so honestly, the founder of, or the author or the founder, the father of CBASP is a guy named Jim McCullough. He was a genius when he wrote this. He started this research in 1974, 50 years ago.
Wow.
And he was an absolute genius in how he put all this together, because we deal with globalization not only in the first step, because we say what happened from the beginning to the end. You can't just keep going and keep going and keep going where it's that situation is so overwhelming that we cannot be informed by it. Then we move into our interpretations where we look at what was I thinking about this? How did it land on me, if you will? And in these interpretations, we look at, am I globalizing? Is this grounded in the situation? Am I mind reading? Because we know that mind reading is so detrimental. And I'm going to say it, to every relationship.
I agree. Agreed. Right here. Yeah.
And having to look at that and seeing how did this help me get to where I'm trying to go? No, it didn't. No, thinking in this way did not help me get where I'm trying to go.
So with that, those key components and those techniques, if you will, of CBASP, I'm sure this benefits a lot of clients, a lot of people who come in and say they've been depressed for a very long time. Is it also effective on other mental health issues or concerns that a person has?
That's a great question. And there's a lot of discussion in the CBASP community about that question in particular. So it's mostly for chronic depression, and chronic depression tends to lend itself to an avoidance of things, a theme of avoidance. We'll say it that way. And it's, is there a possibility that it works for other concerns? Yes. We don't have the research right now to back it up. It's been really focused on depression, chronic depression, and a theme of avoidance.
Okay, so I hear that, and that is wise that we stick with what the research supports. It does sound, though, like this technique you've mentioned could be very helpful, even in everyday life, in our own, for someone who's not necessarily struggling with depression.
Yeah, very, very, very well stated, and in a wise statement at that. I I think that what Big Jim, as we call him, would say to that is, sure, I just don't know if we're doing CBASP at that point.
Right, that's probably true. Good point. So, in your experience with these amazing techniques with CBASP, how have they helped patients at restoration differently than other therapies?
I think that's a fantastic question. I think that the thing that I love about CBASP is that it truly is about learning. We are taking individuals, these amazing individuals who come in who have lived a theme of avoidance. And you think, well, go try it. But Lila, here's the thing is oftentimes they don't know how to. Now, that's not saying anything negative about them as a person. Where would they have learned it? When treating adolescents or the youngsters, if you will, parents come in and they say, well, they should know by now. And the first thing I think is, why? Who taught them?
Right.
And that's one of the things that I love about CBASP is we don't take anything for granted. I hear Big Jim in my head often saying, don't take anything for granted. You don't know that they know how to do that. Ask them if they know how to do that. Walk them through the situation analysis, and you will highlight how they don't know how to do that. I was meeting with an individual just recently who said, I don't know what I want. I know I don't want that, but I don't know what I do want. And I thought, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Who has ever given you that space to evaluate, what do I want?
Right.
And that individual, their significant other history was, the history with their significant other, their significant attachments was very tumultuous, and they
Mm.
were forced to be a caregiver in a lot of different ways. And you think about that, where would they have ever learned? Well, the idea is, and the understanding of CBASP is, we're going to teach you. And there's not going to be any shame involved in you not knowing how.
And you've seen people actually improve over the course of time with this particular type of therapy differently than other therapies that are designed for depression. You've seen improvement.
Oh yeah. I mean, we did a study at Restoration not that long ago where all the all the individuals in the study,
Yeah.
they all improved. And we're talking long, chronic, long-term depression that were the mean age of the average age of onset of depression was 12 years old. 12.
Oh my goodness.
And the average age in the study was, I believe, 35. And they
Okay.
experienced depression for, what would that be, almost 15 years?
Right.
And close to 15. I don't do math, but they, all of them experienced for the first time a relief or remission from their depression. And then at the follow up, which this hasn't been published, but at the follow up, their depression was still in remission. So now they did not meet criteria any longer for early onset depression.
That is such good news. And I would imagine that would bring tremendous hope to people who have walked through life very helpless and hopeless. That
Yeah.
is incredible. So if I come into your office and I've been chronically or persistently depressed for many years, 15 years, like that, what would a typical session of CBASP look like or be structured like?
Yeah, great question. So the first session, and I will tell you, by the book, the first session is going through your depression timeline. But I find
Okay.
sometimes people they want to come in and get a feel for you as the therapist. They want to
Mhm.
understand, what is this CBASP? You said it's not a seafood dish. Well, then what is it? And so they come in and want to know what it's about. And um, you don't have time necessarily to go through the depression timeline. Sometimes you do, but that's the first step, is taking a timeline. Because the interesting thing in that is first of all, we want to know, are you truly chronically depressed? Do you have what we call double depression, where you have that persistent depression, but on top of that, you're in a major depressive episode. So you can have two types of depression in that. So we want to know what we're looking at. But it also is the first step in helping individuals tell their story. Narrate to another person succinctly, with a beginning, the middle, and then up to current day would be the end, right? Of what's my timeline been?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of organization mentally that goes into that I think is really, really interesting. So the second session, the second step would be to collect what we call a significant other history. And a lot of times when people hear significant other, they think their partner or their spouse. We don't mean that. We mean your significant historical attachments. Might be mom and dad. There may be, siblings, other things in there. But that's what we want to understand. Who has left an impression, or as we call it in CBASP, a stamp on your life? What is it? And what sense have you made of that impression or stamp on your life? Like, what sense do you make of that? Which lends itself to understanding what we call the transference hypothesis. Or what does that mean? Well, it's the belief of, I believe this is how you're going to treat me. Therefore, that's all I see out of you.
Okay.
Then the next step after that, we begin teaching them about the situation analysis or the essay. We take you through it, and hopefully it's the third session, but it's the third step, right? We take you through it, we start going through this, and then we start talking about this is how you get your desired outcome. And it takes a bit for people to start coming in with a desired outcome that's met, where their actual outcome meets their desired outcome. But that's that step. And then when we run into those themes of in CBASP, they're called a hotspot, which is where you as the patient expect me as the therapist to act a certain way, and I'm not acting that way. And I want you to see that. Then we'll do what's called the interpersonal discrimination exercise. And so that's how the whole of treatment is organized and looks like in CBASP.
You know that I have a saying in my own life that sounds very simple. However, simple does not equal easy. So I'm sure there is a lot that of struggle going through that, and yet the structure of it is what makes a complex issue simple, so that you can get to a desired outcome. You can get to an idea of how to make change in your life. That's great. What is the role of the therapist during a CBASP session?
Well, the role, I'm glad you asked, because the role of the therapist in a CBASP session is very unique. And truly, it's like we really don't know of any other therapy that the role of the therapist is such the role of the CBASP therapist. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're saying it's not your typical traditional role.
That's right.
Of holding a clipboard, sitting back behind the client.
Right.
We got to have a little laughter here.
Laying on the Chase Lounge and saying, right. Green, tell me what you think of green. No, I'm kidding. No, it is different in the fact that, largely therapists are taught to zip up, so to speak, and to be very tucked in, if you will, with the people that they're treating. And Jim wrote a book in 2006 called CBASP and Disciplined Personal Involvement. And that personal involvement with the person that you're treating looks like sharing their impact, the impact that they have on you as a therapist. You would share that with them. Now, focus on the term disciplined, because it's not saying, oh, well, you hurt my feelings when you did X, Y, and Z, and now you're going to take care of me. It's not that at all. It's saying, when you say these negative things about yourself, I feel excluded from the conversation. I don't feel room for me there. And so it really is sharing that impact, which is it's not atypical of a psychodynamic approach, but the difference in that is that I'm telling you how it affects me. Because typically we would say, I wonder how that impacts others when you do this. I wonder, are you making room for others? You're saying, I feel like there's no room for me. And that's a different role. But the role would be one of warmth, one of kindness, and one of gentle confrontation.
I like that. That's sounds like you could bring about 2 degrees of a shift just by being warm, present, but not just agreeing with everything that goes on.
Right. And really gently confronting things.
Right. Confrontation doesn't have to be bad. It actually can be very connecting and extremely intimate,
right.
So that's good. Well, so let's talk about the empirical evidence. What research supports the effectiveness or efficacy of CBASP?
Oh, that's a great question. There is a lot of research out there, and I would highly encourage everybody to go to Google Scholar and put in CBASP and read until you fall asleep. I'm kidding. But the research shows that CBASP is highly effective, highly effective for chronic depression. Again, there's just not been a lot. There's really been little research done on any other struggle involving CBASP. But the research is really prolific in chronic depression. It it shows that outcomes are favorable. Like I said earlier, the research we've done at Restoration, the outcome were highly favorable for CBASP and depression. It has been put up against Lexapro and some other pharmaceutical medications, and it actually held its own. And so, yeah, see, there's a lot of evidence for CBASP being very being effective.
Good, good. And also though, how does that research, that effectiveness, get measured in a clinical setting? I mean, that sounds like that would be a little difficult.
Yeah, so one of the things that is used by a CBASP therapist, at least here in the States, because CBASP is used all over the world.
Really?
Yeah, it is. It is such a going to the different CBASP meetings is always so fascinating for me because they're all held over Zoom, and this was pre-COVID because you'll have people represented all over the world. It's so wonderful, and hearing their fantastic stories of depression remission it's super encouraging. But one of the things that we use is the Beck Depression Inventory, the BDI. And one of the things we look for is your depression score going down? Is it dropping into a normal range? The other thing that we look for in the clinical setting, how do we know when someone really has CBASP down? Okay, yes, their Beck depression score is dropping into a normal range. But the other thing we know if we're going to be encouraging the termination of treatment is, can you successfully do a situation analysis perfectly with no input from your therapist 2 times in a row? If you can, then we're going to give the green light. You got this. Go give this a shot. Now, I'll tell you in my own personal practice, not everybody's ready to roll on their own when they do that for themselves. They make the decision. I'm not ready to try this on my own. So we may just drop to less frequent, or, they decide at that point. But when someone can effectively do a situation analysis on their own, then 2 times in a row, perfect. Then you know that they at least have it down. And again, this is a learning acquisition model. We want them to acquire learning.
It's like you're taking the training wheels off, right? Even though the relationship with the therapist is warm and gentle and kind of nudging, it's like they take on the agency, if you will, of saying to themselves, this interpretation isn't grounded in accuracy in this moment. And it's self-correcting.
That's right.
In a way. Okay. Well, that's very helpful. I can imagine that would be great. So for our listeners today who might be interested in just trying a CBASP technique at home, and we're saying, hey, try this at home, what would you recommend?
I think there's 2 that I would say off the top of my head I would recommend.
Okay.
The first would be, and this is only taking 1 point out of the situation analysis.
Okay.
You go through a situation, and this is good whether you have chronic depression or not. What do I want out of me? What's my desired outcome here? What do I want out of me in this situation?
Because usually we're looking for what I want the environment, the other people involved, how I want them to change.
That's right.
And if they only would do it this way, then I wouldn't struggle with what I'm struggling with, right?
That's right. And so that gives that sense of agency, as we say, or that sense of understanding what is it I want out of me? And a lot of people, they say to themselves, wow, welcome to me. I've never thought about what I wanted. Like you said, I thought about I want you to be different. I want you to be different. I want to order the environment.
There you go.
And about us, we start thinking, oh, I want to be able to say this. I don't want to be. And what's funny is sometimes people will say, well, I want to say that I'm sorry and I want them to accept it. Like, well, you can't force somebody to do anything. So what do
Right.
you want? Well, I want to say I'm sorry in a very genuine way. Yes, that's a great desired outcome. It's wonderful.
I love that. That is a great desired outcome. And it's easier to leave it there with them.
That's right.
And I can see where that would help with depression because it can be very, even chemically, we can experience a change in how we feel when we're trying to control how someone else is receiving what we're saying.
That's right.
So that's one technique. You said you had two.
Yes. So the other is thinking to yourself, how is this person actually behaving? And really observing them. You may look at that as a mindfulness moment, but it's the awareness of, are they treating me how I thought they would? And how I thought they would treat me, is it the same or is it different? Is their behavior the same or different than what I anticipated? Now, that one could be a little tricky to do on your own. But again, it's asking, are they treating me the way that I thought they would? Or am I giving them room to be different?
Okay. So it sounds like you're stepping back and observing and not necessarily making an assumption about how you're being treated because of this predisposed way of interpreting
That's right.
things.
That's
Okay.
right.
So the first one,
It's my desired outcome for me.
second one,
Am I being treated the way I thought, or do I need to give room for somebody to be different?
okay. So how often should one practice that for it to really become beneficial and I'm going to use this word organic in their way of doing things?
Boy, I'll tell you this: the desired outcome. I would think about that as often as I could. The differentiation idea of, am I being treated the way that I thought, or is this person treating me differently?
Ah,
Doing that one, be having that awareness when you're interacting with somebody. But the desired outcome, do that as often as possible.
that is great. That is so good because I think so much of the time we're not even aware of what our desired outcome is
We
inside of ourselves. It's always external, not internal.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's really simple.
this CBASP is such a wonderful theory that helps people who've really experienced deep, deep childhood trauma
Yeah.
that has kept them from being able to attach to their environment. And understanding this theory, whether you or someone you know is struggling with this, it is a very powerful and very effective technique. So,
Right. And Lee, I've had and it's, that I've worked with Big Jim as well, and CBASP is a part of how I conduct therapy as well. And I will say one of the most rewarding moments is to watch a client go through all of those steps, the arduous task of going through them and having these beautiful aha moments that my life doesn't have to continue the way it has been. It is, I would say it's probably one of the most visual, you can visually see someone find relief.
That's right.
I don't know how to explain it any better. Yes, life-changing.
Life-changing. And you're right. The visual is you're spot on with that. You see someone walk in really curled into themselves. And of course,
Yes.
they've had a very, very tough life. And then for them to shoulders back and realize that they now have not only the connection to somebody, you as their therapist, who's going to have their back, but they also start learning how to connect to other people in their community and build a community. They also have problem solving skills to learn how to think through that they just weren't given in all that chaos of their upbringing. And it is powerful and it is life-changing.
I love it. I love it. And that's what we're about,
Yes.
is changing lives,
Right.
walking with people.
That's right. Celebrating that restored freedom. And when you described it, you described that restored freedom.
There you go. Yep. All right. Well, thanks again.
Thanks. It was fun to be together.
See you next time.
If you found value in our discussion and wish to uncover more about the fascinating world of mental wellness, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where Dr. Long will continue to delve into empowering therapies and strategies for mental wellness. Your journey to understanding and embracing mental health is just beginning, and we're excited to have you with us every step of the way. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and remember to celebrate restored freedom as you uncover it.